Most people think about yoga as breath or the exercises, the asanas, and there are different levels of yoga. But what we will be looking at is yoga of the mind and yoga of the intellect, and it is connected with concentration. And so that's at the level of what you do, but yoga is it's something that alters the being. And pure thought, usually people think of pure thought as something sweet and nice and gentle and pleasant and positive. And all of that is right and true. But there's further levels of pure thought. And your conscience is connected with that. So many people do not trust their conscience. And they are many times conditioned to trust the prevailing assumptions about what is right and wrong, what is good and bad, what is real and unreal, what is true and false. And a lot of times that is not in accord with the inner voice. And the inner voice is really coming from the conscience. So we're going to really look at this inner voice to work with the concepts, the ideas that correspond with that. And we're also going to look at balance. A lot of people think that equality and equilibrium is the same thing, but it's not. Equality is everything is the same. And in the ancient philosophy, it is said that if you consider everything to have the same value, that is the most dangerous thing you could possibly do, because it's the most destructive. And in comparison with that, if you can understand how to keep everything in equilibrium, you will find, I suppose, an interesting example is the water, H2O. 1 O and 2 H makes water. That means it's in balance when there's 2 of one and 1 of the other, but it's not equal. Not 1 H and 1 O, that wouldn't be water. So it's about really getting a sense from the inside of all the different components of your life, whether they're negative or positive or pleasant or unpleasant or whatever, to have balance, to have perspective, so that you have the intuition of what's right moment by moment. And it cannot be determined by preconceptions or rules or anything like this. It has to be intuitive, because it's so, in a sense, precise to get the balance right. And this may be a good description of pure thought, where everything is in balance and that your conscience guides you, and that the influences from outside, which claim to know. They may know something, but they may not know. And we need to be able to be so operational from inside that sometimes what's right doesn't correspond with what everybody else thinks is correct or right or proper. But if you come under that influence, then you will do what's wrong. And that will create imbalance or disequilibrium in your being. And then you can't be self-reliant when out of balance. So I want to use this time to explore this. It's a very subtle thing. And all of us are under many influences, some of which you can pinpoint, but many of which you can't pinpoint because they've been there for your whole life and they're part of the air you breathe and so many things like this, but they create disequilibrium, and then you're not able to flow and you're not able to sense so well what's right, what needs attention, what is a signal to you about something. You may think it's a signal about something else. So there are many areas of life that are talking to us to let us know something, but we might not pick up the message because we're not tuned correctly. And in my experience, I think it's very important to work with the conscience, which can tell you what is right or wrong in terms of conduct, and what is right or wrong in terms of ideas and concept. Because civilization is based in ideas. And if a civilization is balanced and sustainable, that's a sign that the ideas are correct. But if it isn't, then we need to look at the ideas that are its foundation, because we operate on the basis of these ideas, and we take it to be true and override the conscience in many ways. There are conventions, there are conditionings, there are many things that we take to be right and true and proper, but which create disequilibrium, and it creates ill health, it creates emotional pain, social pain, lack of clarity, depression, weakness in the face of different challenges. And so this weekend we will try to get in touch with those things so that we can be more right. I use the word right for something to do with equilibrium rather than this is correct, that's not correct. But it nevertheless is about correct and not correct. And it's also about waiting. Sometimes you have to wait because you have to know when is the right moment. If you do it too soon or too late, then you miss. And so then it doesn't work out. And so this is really the elements that I want to work with. And of course, the primary equilibrium that we all talk about, hear about, is the equilibrium between the soul and the body. And people talk of mind, body, spirit, but I don't. I talk of body and soul. Mind is something the soul has, but it's not a separate thing. Your um, there's a word that was in our study that we were working with earlier today, and the word, the study that we do is in Hindi, but there are a lot of English words that appear in it, where English words are used in a way that none of us would ever use them. So we have to figure out what that really means. And the word was personality. And so when you think of the word personality, it's not a word that you probably use very much. Or sometimes people talk of personality traits. But in this case, personality to me corresponds a little bit more to the word persona, which is different. Everyone is absolutely individual, and there are so many different layers of your being. And as you were saying, you want to go deep. And going deep has to do with going close to the reality of oneself. There are different words people use: the true self, the real self, the undistorted self. I think we do get distorted by traumas, by life, by circumstances, and when there are a lot of distortions, then it's difficult to remember what it is like to be me before anything ever happened, whenever that was. So we're also looking at ourselves in a context of time that is timeless. And I was reading some material while I was on the flight over here, and it was quite interesting, talking about human life in terms of 7 years, 7, 14, 21, 49, up to 105. And a few people do live up to 105. Not too many, I suppose. But by the time you get to 105, according to this schematic that I was looking at, there you're in the timeless state. And I think the timeless state is very important. One thing is your physical age, but then, you know, in terms of the spirit, in terms of the soul, that's anyway immortal, that's anyway timeless. But I think to reach the timeless part of oneself without having to survive 105 years physically, which may or may not work out, but I think there's something very important about putting one's finger on the timeless state of being, because to me it's something to do with not being limited by the era that you're born in, not being limited by the circumstances that have formed your external personality, not being limited by your nationality or your gender or race or your culture or your education or any of these things, but to go to that place where you're just your being, and the essence of your persona. It's not that when everybody gets to that point that they all become the same. No. Another analogy that I think is quite helpful is to consider that everyone has a vibration, which is like a musical note, and everyone has a different one. As many people as there are, that many notes there are. And I think that when you can touch your note and sing your sound, you are expressing your individuality in its most pure and its quintessential characteristic. And I think that yoga is something that will cause that to happen, because you see this picture that we have always in the middle, which is a representation of the purest being there is. And so yoga between yourself and the purest being there is going to set up an oscillation or a vibration which is healing, a resonance, which enables you to get to your note. And then, if you can imagine everyone in their own note, that might be considered the music of the spheres, something like that. You know, the music of the spheres? So this is celestial sound. Celestial in the sense that when a person is in their purest form, that's called celestial. That's perfect. And it's absolutely individual, so that there is harmony. And harmony is a very interesting concept. In music, you have the treble clef, you know what that looks like. And it's a very strange design, but with a lot of meaning, because it goes round and round and up and down. The other clefs don't do that. Only the treble clef will do that. The other clefs, you have something like a K, with the middle line being the note that's your basic note, and the bass clef just goes round and round and down. But the treble clef, round and up and down, corresponds to a symbol for what happens to the human being through time. If you think of yourself as a piece of music, which you are extending into the universe all the time. When you're in balance, when you're in essence, it's a sound that carries you to the higher space, or a state of ecstasy. A spiritual ecstasy is that. But everything is in balance such that you go up, you have to be able to handle going down. And sometimes people think that the light, the white, the high notes are very nice and the down is not very nice. And so you want to have half, but not the other half. You don't embrace the dark aspect of your soul. And if you go in somewhere like Iceland in June, there's no night. And you miss it. And the people do all sorts of things to create night, but the birds don't care, they keep singing. And so I think that part of catching that ecstatic, beautiful, pure note has to be in the context of its antithesis and its opposite, because you cannot know what's right without the possibility of what's not right. You cannot appreciate clarity unless you know chaos. So the wisdom and competence of somebody who is developing themselves spiritually is to be able to be very comfortable with the light and the dark, And as high you want to go, so low you have to be able to also go without being freaked out by it or something like this, you see. Because it's about equilibrium. And we'll also look a little bit about karma, because pure thought is also a form of karma. And karma being action, and so you have an active mind, that's an action. You have a thought. Why does a certain thought come in your mind? It can be triggered by a perception, a sense perception. Somebody does something, somebody says something, positive, negative, neutral, whatever, but you respond to it mentally. That's karma. It's a choice. But there are things that occur in your mind that you are not able to be detached from. Am I right? And these things distort you. And so the work that we will look at today is to try to identify those and to work on some techniques to reach a place where you can be neutral about things that you are not neutral about at all. Because that's a very great achievement, to be able to feel the intensity of the thing that you're not neutral about in its full intensity and still be neutral about it. And allow the energy of it to move through you for as long as it wants to without being put out by it. Because you have to wait until it's gone through. It's like an electric shock. If it's too bad, it will kill you, right? But if you can be open enough and patient enough to let it move through you until it's passed, then it leaves you a message, which may not be in words, but maybe just a kind of resonance where you get it, that it has the power to limit you, and you have the power to not be limited by something that wants to limit you and that's used to limiting you. Because you can endure it. So that's the treble clef going down, but it's still music, you know. And so we need to take a look at how this energy is operating inside us. Because spirituality is not about just going to the sky only. It's about spanning all the way from the basest notes to the highest notes, to be in this symphony of the human experience, which has all of it, and to dance with it, and to not be afraid of the things that are culturally designated things that you have to be afraid of, like snakes and spiders and whatever, people killing each other and that sort of thing, you know, because it's part of life. When a lion jumps on a giraffe to take it down, you don't like it, right? But you also have to understand that it is there. And there's something in us that says, no, we have to stop this. but something else that's in us that says we have to understand it. And the lion is not going to go on 10 giraffes, or 1 giraffe, the lioness. Or the human doesn't understand those things and is unable to have a healthy relationship with things like blood sacrifice and all the things that are like bad. And because of that, there is a tremendous disequilibrium that has invaded our collective consciousness, and we need to be able to work through it. And you can't work through it until you allow it to be there in all of its intensity, to be able to accept that it is there. It is part of the human experience. And of course the thing that people really don't like is death. And the thing that one works with in spiritual practice is the ego death. And because there's actually basically no difference between the two. And the ego death is something that I think you do many times before you finally leave your body. And if you leave your body without that, you have to keep going and going and going until finally you get to 105 and you're timeless. Because timeless is that you've made contact with your immortality and you've come to terms with your mortality. And I think that's something very important that allows us to be free. Because the world that we live in operates by limiting people's freedoms and not knowing how to use your own freedom and using violence to manipulate and all sorts of things like this, which are absolutely part of human culture, but which don't really belong in a culture where there is this sense of the whole spectrum, from the highest to the lowest, from the lightest to the darkest. And knowledge of karma means that you know that it is not something that you can control. By which I mean, when you try to control society by using violence, you make it out of control. When you understand how the process of karma works out, to be able to flex with it and work with it and be easy with it, the consequences of your karma, the consequences of everybody else's karma, and to distinguish that from the consequences of time, which are different. I'm just in a new house, and in this house there's a grandfather clock. And this is one of those kinds of clocks which is based on weights. So it has 2 weights which go down and down and down, and because of these weights, you know what time it is. And when it gets to the bottom, time stops. Let's start again. But it's a very interesting analogy, because there are many things that happen because of time. Aging is because of time. Loss of intelligence because of time. Loss of health because of time. It is the nature of time to bring us to a point where everything collapses and returns to its dust. And karma is different, but it's difficult to distinguish between what's an effect of time and what's an effect of karma. And if you can't distinguish, it limits your power to choose or your power to discern. So part of yoga is to be able to develop that, I call it resonance, so that you can tell what's karma, what's time. Something that is karma, you're responsible for. Something that is time, you're not responsible for. Somebody else's karma, you're not responsible for. You see the lioness jump on the giraffe. You take responsibility because you don't like it. It offends your civilized nature, which is in direct opposition with the reality of life, you know. So there's something about our civilized nature which uncivilizes us because we are not adequately able to work with realities of life. You see what I mean? So I think that purity is when we arrive at an ability to really discern those, to catch those, to allow them to live in our being and to know that this is life. And notwithstanding, you love life. From its beautiful to its horrible, because life is sacred. Like they say, you are not allowed to kill yourself. Why? Nobody can tell you why. Although it's a sin, okay, why? You need to know, but nobody can tell you. And why life is sacred, because if you don't honor it, it will kill you. And so we have to be able to go through the things that are unendurable to extend ourselves beyond our limits. You know, as Carla was saying, when you do the movement, you will be taken to a place where you go past your limits and you see how you work with that. Can you go a little bit further? Because sometimes there are things that take us so far beyond our limits that we say, no, I can't. And you resist it. And there you block yourself from yourself. And so when you do yoga properly, it will take you there. And this is why sometimes people say, well, yoga will take you to peace and harmony, and it will be nice and pleasant and all that strawberry cream pie. But yoga is a purification process. And purification is about removing what doesn't belong. And removing what is distortion, what is pollution, what is not you. And when something that is inside needs to not be there, it goes out with pain, a lot of pain, and distress, disturbance, and so on. So these are these dark parts. And so when you do yoga like properly like that, it will take you to that. Because when you come through that, there's a transfiguration that happens. The very potent light comes through, light which is too bright to bear, but it's light. And if you just bear it anyway, then you learn that your limitations don't have to be there. They're really the ego, that the ego death is from. So we will try to explore some of these and see what we can understand about purity at the spiritual level. So we will have some meditation for about a half an hour, and this picture is a good focal point. I mentioned before that meditation includes concentration, and in the meditation that I practice, it's done with the eyes open, and you can allow your eyes to rest there, not concentrate on that because that's too external, but where you allow your eyes to rest on a point that is helpful for your mind to be concentrated, because the mind gets easily moving around. And if you concentrate in your mind in a rigid way, this is not good, because it's brittle and it hurts, it gives you a headache. But if you go around and around a point, then you're moving, but you're still focused. It's like a drill when you make a hole in the wall. It's better to go round and round, get a better hole. And so it's like this, you go around and around ideas. And I think that you can give yourself this thought of something like, I want to understand what is my purity. Something like that. And then just allow your thoughts to go around that. They may go off on a tangent, but it's an ellipse. It comes back. And you stay around like, I want to know what is my purity. Do you want to know what is your purity? That means it's not just an arbitrary question, it's a real question. I want to understand my purity, I want to feel my purity, I want to see it. Because will is quite important. There is a word that we use which is tapasya. Have you heard that word before? Tapasya. Tapasya means striving. So when people are on a spiritual practice and they want something, they want nirvana, or they want to be free, or they want to be nothing, or they want to be something, but there's this will is very important. So the willpower and the concentration and the tapasya, that I want to know what is my purity. So you will use a certain force of willpower, but you will not use force in that sense. But if you want something patiently, then you don't have to force it. This is my direction, and however long it takes, and whatever it takes is where I'm going. That's it. There isn't any force involved, but you're also not deviated. Do you see what I'm saying? And you let yourself move around this decision that I choose to find my purity, see my purity, know my purity, something like that. Do you like that? And think of yourself as a point of light. The soul in purity has the form of a point of light. Pure light. You're focused on your being. I am light. The core of yourself, infinitesimally small. Infinitely powerful. Vast energy of your being. Concentrated in the tiniest point. You are still in the midst of time. All that is light and dark is in that point of light. Your body is not you. You are neither male nor female. And you have the full capacity for both. your light. Eternal. Immortal. Timeless. Your energy is depleted. You need to take power. To restore yourself to your original condition. There is a light beyond. Discern that light beyond. Create a bridge between your light and that light. A beam of light. Open up a channel. Open up your being to receive light. Take power. The energy of life. Let it flow into you. Stay with the light. Let it flow in and through. Allow yourself to detach from your body. Rising above it. And let yourself float in the light. Immerse yourself in the light. In stillness, peacefully. Fearlessly. Feel your own light becoming brighter, sharper, cleaner. Very slowly, taking energy. Feel the radiance of your light extending far. Filling the atmosphere with light. You are a conduit for that light. Feel the softness of that light loving you. Nurturing you. Feel the resonance healing you. Restoring you. Purifying you. Brightening you. And gently let yourself slowly reconnect with your body. Feel your energy moving, filling the whole body with light. And you come back to the everyday world.